Okay, I will just give you simple examples about the impact study in forestry and agriculture. And for forestry, I will really use the basic one. It's really super simple example based on forestry index. And I will present you example which use just one our regional climate model. So one of the ideas for this forestry example is to present you again some very basic concepts, and as we already talked about that in the previous sessions. For the beginners, it's really good to start with one model or one scenario and something very simple, just to get some kind of experience how this impact modeling works. And for the agriculture, I will present you a little bit more complicated, let's say, more complex example with a crop model and introduction of a model ensembles, etc. So for the forestry, I will present you the example with the forestry index, which is known as Ellenberg quotation index, and it's a number that can be easily calculated from basic climate variables. And what is good also for about this, the variables that are used are monthly means, it's temperature for July, and precipitation on annual level. So you just divide these two numbers and multiply by 1,000, and you will get this number. And for the Central and Eastern Europe, it is well established when this number is below 30, then you have humid climate that are dominated by beech tree species. So this number is developed to track where the beech can grow and where is not so good condition, let's say climate condition for the beeches. And if the number is above 30, then you can expect drier and warmer climate where oak species is maybe dominated the area. So as I said, it's well-established number, and you will find a lot of papers. So also the one of the good points here is that when you start some impact study, try to find the papers that already use some similar statistics and try to compare your results with already established one. So how the steps will look like in case of forestry, as we already again talked last week. First, prepare your observations. So you can use the station observations, or you can use some kind of grid climatology. Then you should prepare data from the climate model. So you should prepare the historical period and projections. And again, as we mentioned for many times, the biased adjustment of the model data is crucial in many cases of impact studies. So you need to adjust your model data. But as I said, since here we're going to use the monthly means and the annual mean, it's much easier to adjust this average monthly or seasonal or annual values than when you do this adjustment of the daily data. So after this, you can calculate your index from observations. And after that, you can calculate index from historical run. So and then you can calculate for the future. When you calculate, of course, using data from the regional climate model, then you should use the bias adjusted data to calculate it. And finally, you can compare your calculation from observations and calculation from historical run. Is the first step to check how the model data, the results obtained from the model data is different, or how they are compared to something which is observed conditions, and then you can compare future with historical values. And here is the results for the Serbia, how this forestry index is used. So you can see the blue areas is the areas where the index is below 30, and the yellow areas is areas where the number is above 30. So in this case, we used the 69 meteorological station. Temperature and precipitation were bias adjusted on this location. And then this temperature and precipitation value are interpolated by using universal kriging and digital elevation model. And finally, we calculate this. So you can see also from this picture that the stars are meteorological stations, but the black dots are locations of beech forest in Serbia. So you can see that this number is really nicely represent the area when you can expect the beech forest. Okay, the beech forest is not in the whole blue area, but you cannot almost find the location where the black dot is in yellow area. So this is also a nice example how the one number can make this boundary about some biological system where you can expect this or not. And when you then do it calculations for the future, here is you can see that picture is very similar between something which is calculated from observation, and here is the results from historical run, and then you can compare it to the future, and you can see again the very simple result that area which support this tree species is going to shrink significantly in the future. So also this is one nice example how you can test, let's say, the sensitivity of something in terms of future climate change. So you can see that here the sensitivity in terms of this area is really big comparing to using the input from temperature and precipitation. So what are advantages of this kind of approach? It's easy to implement and also it's easy to implement even with a large number of ensemble members. Easy to test system sensitivity to the future climate change, and not much additional uncertainty related to the impact model. So if you introduce a more complex impact model, then you will introduce additional uncertainty in your results. But there is not many, but there is also disadvantages. There is no feedbacks within the system. There is lack of management intervention options. So you cannot test how these tree species will behave in the future if you do some kind of forestry management, how it's gonna change in terms of really existence of that tree species, and no explicit information about other environmental components, let's say like a soil properties. Okay, maybe some of the trees that are located on one soil type will behave differently in terms of other forests that are located on other soil types. And also maybe this statistical relation that exists between these three species and the index will not be valid in the future. So because it was developed using the historical data, and maybe in the future this number will not stand in the same way as it is established in using the past climate. So this is disadvantages related to this approach. The next example is for agriculture. So as you already see, there is many kind of these impact models, and one of the impact models that I will present here is a crop model which is called the aqua crop. As you already can see from this diagram, the processes that are included and the way how the model produced at the end, the yield of the crop is much more complex in comparison to something which is the simple statistical relation about the climate condition and some kind of the system. And also what is interesting here, I means irrigation. So you can also can introduce in this kind of more complex system models, let's say, you can introduce some kind of human behavior, somehow how the humans interact with that system, which can help you to do simulations in terms that you can assume that you will have some kind of adaptation in the future, let's say. So what are the steps in this kind, in this example? Okay, these steps will include using of multimodal ensemble data. So again, the first step is to prepare observation. You should always start from observations, then you prepare the raw model data, historical and projections again for each ensemble member. In many cases, this kind of more complex model use the daily data. So the biased adjustment of data is also more complex instead of using this monthly mean data. And finally, the crop models and other kind of these models often expect additional information like a soil characteristic, management decisions like irrigation. But also you need to do this kind of model calibration. Okay, you should probably find some of the parameters just testing or using some of the statistical approaches to calibrate your model to match something which is observed in the past. Again, in terms of calculation, you should first run your model using observation. For each ensemble member, run crop model using the data from historical and projection run. So I saw examples in the past that people average, like the average temperature from 5 different models, then I average precipitation from 5 different models, and then use that time series of average temperature and precipitation as an input for the impact model. I would not advise you to do this. That it looks like single realization, but it's better to run the model for each separate model as a separate integration. And finally, in this type of model, you can create these additional runs, so you can use different model setups. Again, in terms of crop modeling, you can have different management practices, or you can use different genetics in terms of crop that you try to simulate, etc. So, and for the analysis, you should first compare the model from a run which is done with observations with this historical ensemble run, and to see how your model what the results are, how they stand in terms of how the results can compare when you obtain the results with observations and the original climate model data. And again, you should compare future against the historical value and compare different model setups. So here you can do this kind of exercise when you make different management decisions in terms of crop production or different irrigation strategies or something like that. So I will give you the example again for Serbia for the maize production here, and I will split this in 2 research papers. The first one found that without irrigation, the maize yield change obtained from the period will lie between minus 52 to 22%. And if you introduce additional irrigation, there will be no change in the yield when we talk about the maize yield. But another paper, which are more sophisticated in terms of what they tested, is that if you change the showing date within the optimum time frames in the future climate, then you will get the same amount. The yield will be same, and you will not need additional irrigation in terms of what already is used. So this is the example how you, with this shifting of decisions in terms of management options, you can better understand how the system will behave in the future. Because one of the decisions in this case is that to change your production calendar. Okay, you will not plant at the same time. You will not expect in the same time that you will pass through different phenological phases of the plant development and so on. So this is just an example that when you introduce this more complex model, you can also create your own scenarios or your own pathways how you will interact with the changing properties of the system, which are forced by changing climate. And also, when you have another thing that I want to point out, when you have this ensemble of integration, you can also, you will also get the range of your result, which is related to the different model ensembles. Here is the range again for the corn yield or maize yield. Okay, and one of interesting conclusions which you extract from this ensemble is presented here, that even that median value are not changed much in the future. You can see that range of expected results will increase in the future, compared to something which is obtained for the historical climate period. And this range sometimes can become from the uncertainty related in results of the climate models, but on other way it can really be part of the sensitivity of the system, because maybe you can expect more extreme years, not only in terms of how the climate parameters will change, but your system will start to produce, let's say, more extremes. Even the changes in in climate parameters are not so extreme, let's say. Okay, and advantages of this kind of models is that they explicitly simulate the process, so you can get more insight how the changes in the future will look like. You will have these feedbacks within the system which are almost important as changes in the climate variables, because the feedbacks are really important to understand how system works. And then you can introduce in these more complex models, you can introduce this management and intervention options, and you can create some kind of your own scenarios how the future will develop. These more scenarios means that you can test different adaptation options and see how the system will change, or how the system will evolve in terms that you introduce some kind of adaptation. And also in this kind of more complex model, you will include information about your environmental components, like soil properties, as I already said. So what are the disadvantages? You will spend more time to bias adjust data, to compute all these different members, ensemble members. Also, the models are more computational demanding. So the amount of time that you need for the study will increase significantly. Additionally, uncertainties, all this additional information that you have will also introduce additional sources of uncertainties, and you should take care of that. And again, these kind of models cannot work with raw climate data, as we underlined for many times here. So you should do this bias adjustment, and this computational demand will pose the fact that you cannot work with large ensemble of climate model data. So you should use the smaller number of models to fit into some time frame that you have to do this impact study. Okay, that's all for me. And you have a few extra slides after this. So if you need some more information, you can go through that extra slides. Okay, thank you.